Donald Trump has dropped his tariff bomb. Starting tomorrow, he will slap 25% tariffs on India. At the same time, he's warming up to Pakistan. Trump has struck a deal to develop Islamabad's oil reserves. What exactly is the US president playing at, and how is India reacting? Today, the Commerce Minister spoke in Parliament. We'll tell you what he said. We'll also look at the impact on US consumers. Can Trump's economy handle his trade war? And when the dust settles, what will remain of the India-US relationship? Is it now beyond repair? In West Asia, the US has sanctioned companies linked to Iranian oil. Canada has joined a growing list of countries recognizing Palestine. But will it change anything on the ground? All this and more coming up. The headlines first.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signs a new legislation restoring the independence of the country's anti-corruption agencies. Zelensky's move reverses changes that had sparked large-scale protests in the country. It had also drawn criticism from Ukraine's key ally, the European Union. Russia and Syria plan to bolster ties and review agreements made under the previous pro-Moscow government of Bashar al-Assad. This comes amid uncertainty over the future of two Russian military bases located on Syria's Mediterranean coast. The Syrian foreign minister appealed for Russia's support during talks in Moscow. This is his first official visit to the country since Assad was ousted in an offensive last year. US President Donald Trump renews his attack on Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Trump called Powell too stupid to head the body after the US central bank continued to hold rates steady. The US president has repeatedly attacked Powell over the rate decision. Myanmar's junta ends its state of emergency as it ramps up plans for a December election that the opposition has vowed to boycott. International observers also fear that the polls will be used to consolidate the military's power. The junta declared a state of emergency in February 2021, sparking a civil war which has claimed thousands of lives. And Microsoft's valuation surges above $4 trillion following strong earnings. Investor bullishness for artificial intelligence also lifted major indices further into record territory during early trade, with both the S&P 500 and Nasdaq trading above all-time closing highs.
The gloves are off between India and Donald Trump. No more pretense of friendship, no more ambivalence. The US president has chosen war. What's worse, he's not just attacking India, he's cozying up to Pakistan. It's been a hectic 24 hours, so first let's unpack what happened. Yesterday evening, Trump posted on social media. He announced 25% tariffs on Indian goods. This new rate will kick in tomorrow, which is when his tariff deadline expires, August 1st. But as always, Trump did not stop with a simple announcement. He added adjectives and insults. In fact, let me quote from his statement. India's tariffs are far too high, among the highest in the world, and they have the most strenuous and obnoxious non-monetary trade barriers of any country. Trump listed out other issues as well. He complained that we bought weapons from Russia. He complained that we bought Russian energy. So in addition to the 25% tariff, he threatened penalties. Naturally, Indians were incensed. We saw the USA as a strategic partner. We also engaged with Trump in good faith. No retaliation, no aggressive remarks. India sought to address Trump's concerns. And what did India get in return? Unilateral tariffs and insults. The day ended with a reaction from India. The government said it was studying Trump's announcement, which brings us to today. Trump was posting on social media again. Listen to what he said. I don't care what India does with Russia. They can take their dead economies down together for all I care. Now, a couple of points to note here. First, you are factually wrong. India is the fastest growing major economy in the world. If anything's dead, it is Donald Trump's approval ratings. And secondly, you're flip-flopping. Yesterday, Trump warned of penalties because India bought Russian goods. Today, he says he doesn't care what India does with Russia. So which is it? Trump keeps saying that India is his friend, but his actions suggest otherwise.
As you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world. Now they're willing to cut it very substantially, but we'll see what happens. We're talking to India now.
frankly, this is our fault. This is a man who called Jeffrey Epstein his friend. So clearly, the word doesn't mean a lot to him. And speaking of toxic friends, America is rekindling with an old toxic flame. I'm talking about Pakistan. Trump has struck a deal with Islamabad. Again, let me quote from his statement. Pakistan and the United States will work together on developing their massive oil reserves. We are in the process of choosing the oil company that will lead this partnership. Who knows, maybe they'll be selling oil to India someday. That's a twin affront. First, he strikes a deal with Pakistan and then he suggests that India buy oil from Pakistan. But this move is not backed by data. Pakistan has 353 million barrels of oil reserves. They rank 52nd in the world. I'll repeat, 52nd. They make up only 0.021% of global reserves. And yet Trump says Pakistan's reserves are massive. I wonder where he got that from. Maybe the same book that told him that windmills cause cancer. The question is, what is driving Trump's pivot? Why is he snubbing India and partnering with Pakistan? Well, we can think of three reasons. Number one, Trump has personal stakes in Pakistan. His family firm has signed a crypto deal with Islamabad, and since then things have moved into overdrive. Reports say Pakistan is fast-tracking their crypto rollout. They want to integrate crypto assets into their financial system. Chances are Trump's firm will play a role in that. So that's the first reason. Reason number two that could explain this pivot. Pakistan is subservient to Trump. They have nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. They have thanked him for mediating with India, none of which New Delhi has done. In fact, the Indian government has fact-checked the US president. It has repeatedly denied his claims of mediation. Which brings us to the final reason. The role of America's deep state. We are not talking about some secret cabal here. We are talking about the security establishment in the US. Your generals and spy masters, most of them have issues with India. A, they don't like New Delhi's neutrality in Ukraine. They would like India to condemn Russia. And B, they want to recruit India against China. Basically treat us like a pawn. But India has refused to play ball. Our China policy is based on our national interest. Standoff, clash, reset, it'll be our call. Washington does not have the right to decide it. But Pakistan is more than willing. Their generals have long-standing ties to Washington, and we saw evidence of that this weekend. Pakistan awarded one of its highest civilian honors to an American general, the Nishan-e-Imtiaz. It was presented to US General Mike Kurilla. He heads the US Central Command. He recently praised Pakistan as a phenomenal partner. So simply put, the US deep state wants India to be a lackey, but India is unwilling to be one. And even on tariffs, New Delhi has fought for its interests. How? Well, that's our next story. Trump has made his choice. He's siding with Pakistan, shaking hands with the generals of Rawalpindi and picking a fight with New Delhi. His outburst yesterday makes it quite clear Trump is not getting what he wants from India, and he is not hiding his frustration. Negotiations have been going on for months. Last night, India issued a statement. Despite the setback, it remains committed to the talks. But India also drew a red line. The statement named three priorities: farmers, entrepreneurs, and micro and small and medium enterprises or MSMEs.
सरकार हमारे किसानों, श्रमिकों, एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, उद्यमी, निर्यातकों, सूक्ष्म लघु और मध्यम उद्योगों और उद्योग जगत के सभी हितधारकों के कल्याण की रक्षा और संवर्धन को सर्वोच्च महत्व देती है। हम अपने राष्ट्रीय हितों को सुरक्षित करने और आगे बढ़ाने के लिए सभी आवश्यक कदम उठाएंगे।
India wants to protect all these. And that's where the deal seems to be stuck. Because what Trump wants is different. Just look at the trade deals that he signed recently with other countries, with Vietnam, with the Philippines, Indonesia, the European Union, Japan, and the United Kingdom. One theme runs through all of them: tariff-free access for American exports. In some cases, tariffs were scrapped completely. The rest dropped duties on most US products. And Trump wants the same from India: a tariff-free market for all US goods. But India is not giving in. New Delhi wants a deal A deal that is fair, balanced, and mutually beneficial. Not an agreement where American goods enter India duty-free, but Indian exports still face steep Trump tariffs. And this is not an unreasonable ask. Look at India's trade deal with the UK, where New Delhi decided to remove tariffs on nearly 90% of British goods. At the same time, dairy products were excluded from the deal with the UK. Same with edible oils and apples. And the UK met India halfway. London has committed zero duties on most agriculture products and processed food items. And this would benefit India's agriculture exports. They could increase by more than 20% over the course of the next 3 years. Is Donald Trump willing to make similar concessions? Considering the deals that he struck so far, that looks unlikely. Despite getting tariff-free access, he has maintained a baseline tariff for all US trading partners. So we are at an impasse. The question then is, what does it mean for India, for its exporters, and for India's trade ties with the United States? It looks like New Delhi is prepared to endure some pain, at least in the short term. And here is how one government official put it to an Indian newspaper. So which sectors are vulnerable? Textiles, pharmaceuticals, automobile components, steel and aluminium, solar equipment, and IT or information technology. Trump had set a deadline of August 1st, so tomorrow his 25% tariffs for India will kick in. He also wants to slap an additional penalty, that's what he's called it. And this is over India's trade with Russia, especially the oil purchases. He wants to punish that. So the actual levies could be much higher. We'll have to wait till tomorrow to find out what the final number is. The Indian markets have been impacted by this impasse, of course. It was a volatile day of trading, with the Sensex and the Nifty swinging between red and green. We could see more of this in the coming days. India-US ties are entering a difficult phase, one marked by hard negotiations and growing tensions. So Trump has gone ahead and done it. The tariffs are in. But here's the thing. Tariffs don't just target other countries, they also punish your consumers. And this time it's the American consumer who's in the line of fire. Can the US really afford this trade war, or is it setting itself up for economic whiplash? Let's try to break it down. First, the trade balance. India and the US currently trade goods worth $130 billion, but this relationship leans heavily in India's favor. India exports goods worth $88 billion. It imports just about $42 billion. That's a $46 billion trade surplus for India. And yes, slapping tariffs could eat into that surplus, but it won't just dent India's exports. It would also raise prices in America. From gems to smartphones, everything could get more expensive for them. And I will explain how. We'll start with jewelry. India exports gems and jewelry worth $8.5 billion to the US. This includes diamonds, gold, and precious stones. The US is, in fact, the biggest importer of diamonds from India. So a 25% tariff will make those prices go up. Expect your rings and necklaces to become more expensive. Then there's clothing. India is the second largest textile exporter to the US. It sends garments worth $2.5 billion. So tariffs could affect clothing prices. By some estimates, they could rise by 17%. So a simple white shirt, and it's about to get more expensive. Third on the list is auto parts. India exports auto parts worth $2 billion to the United States every year. This includes basic items like transmission belts and gear systems. Without these, US car repairs slow down. So Americans could be looking at a bigger repair bill. Fourth is medicines. India makes 40% of America's generic drugs, 40% of all drugs, from insulin to cancer medication to even your daily blood pressure pills. India manufactures all of it. The US is the top buyer of Indian generics. In 2024 alone, India exported drugs worth $8.7 billion to the US. More than 90% of American prescriptions are for generics. 4 in 10 come from Indian manufacturers. Now, with tariffs, the cost of essential medicine could skyrocket. And this is going to be detrimental. Healthcare is already unaffordable for millions of Americans. The last thing they need is higher drug prices. Although some reports do suggest that pharma could be exempt from this, that Trump's new tariffs will not affect the pharma industry, at least for now. Which brings us to the last thing on the list, electronics, your phones, your laptops, everything. This year, India emerged as the largest exporter of smartphones to the United States. Between April and June, 44% of all smartphones sold in the US were made in India. 44%, that's a massive leap. A 240% jump in shipments over the past year. As of April this year, India made $22 billion worth of phones for Apple alone. And that has changed the game. India is now edging out both China and Vietnam. But it's not just Apple anymore. Samsung and Motorola are also eyeing the Indian market, slowly shifting parts of their US-bound production here. So the direction is clear. India is becoming the new assembly line for America's smartphones, which is why electronics are currently exempt from the tariffs. A 25% tariff will not be imposed on them. And here's the irony. Trump wants to protect the American consumers and jobs, but those might be the first to feel the heat because prices will rise, supply chains will stretch, and American households will be the ones picking up the bill. So my message to the American consumer is this. Next time you head to the mall and see a higher price tag, do not blame India. Blame the man who made a trade war out of a friendship. So the US cannot afford to keep this trade war going. But what about India? Can New Delhi absorb the pressure of higher tariffs? And if not, what are the options? Well, right now, India has two paths in front of it. Option one is the diplomatic route. You can continue engaging with the Trump administration, keep the talks going, and try to break the deadlock. Reports say India is still committed to that process, to the negotiations. Behind the scenes, negotiators are drawing up new proposals. India could offer to buy more American goods and try to narrow the trade gap without giving up its own leverage. What could that look like? What kind of proposals can India table? Broadly, there are three proposals being discussed. One, stepping up imports of US natural gas. Two, buying more communication equipment. And three, increasing purchases of gold. All three could help ease trade tensions, but only if Washington is willing to compromise too. And right now, that's the unknown. Knowing Donald Trump, he could easily shift the goalposts. He could make new demands. So as of today, this is less likely to succeed unless the US meets India halfway. That's the first option, engaging with Trump. The second option is to secure new trade partners. You see, America was not the only country that India was talking to. There are more deals in the pipeline. Like with the European Union, New Delhi has been actively negotiating with Brussels. Talks are on with other countries as well, like New Zealand, Chile, Oman, Qatar, and existing trade arrangements can also be expanded. As of this month, India has 13 active free trade agreements with various countries and some regions. The impasse with the US may speed up negotiations with other partners. So India is not out of options. If the goal is to strike more trade deals, India has other options. But if India wants to build long-term resilience and shield its economy from trade shocks like this one, then we have to look at the third way, one that does not need a trade deal. India could leverage its own economy, and on this front, India does have a range of options. It could promote manufacturing. And here, it stands to benefit from its PLI scheme, the production-linked incentives, the PLI scheme, which was launched in 2020 for smartphone manufacturing. It's been 5 years, and the scheme has delivered. Smartphone production in India has become cheaper. This has allowed manufacturers to absorb some of the shocks of higher tariffs and costs. But you see, these incentives were valid only for 5 years. Companies like Samsung benefited from them. But now their exports from India have declined since the incentives have run out. So the government could consider extending this scheme so that manufacturers can continue growing their businesses at home. Expanding production can create jobs and help companies from India stay competitive in overseas markets. At the same time, extending a stimulus at home could also help. It could boost demand. Goods meant for export could be diverted to the domestic market. In fact, China did that. When demand for Chinese exports declined this year, Beijing offered subsidies to its citizens. They could purchase stuff like cars and appliances at cheaper rates. Now, while the Chinese economy still has not fully recovered, these measures did help ease the tariff shocks to a large extent. The point we're making is quite simple. Every crisis brings a chance to reset, and this could be India's moment to push for change if it plays its cards right. Trade and tariff aside, what does this mean politically? Will it derail India's ties with the United States? In the short term, yes. We are seeing that happen in front of our eyes. Trump is insulting India, he's striking deals with Pakistan, he's tariffing us, so clearly the ties are being derailed. The obvious question is why? We dealt with Donald Trump in his first term. He had a great equation with New Delhi, so what has changed now? Mainly two things. One, like I said before, Trump wants a lackey, but India refuses to be one. And secondly, Trump has become more transactional. His second term, in fact, has been defined by that. Want US weapons? Give Trump a big Boeing plane. Want US money? Nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Want US military aid? Sign off your rare earth minerals. But India does not do transactional diplomacy. For starters, things move at their own pace in New Delhi. Our bureaucracy is like a giant, not adaptable to quick transactions. Secondly, it's not in our DNA. India's foreign policy has always been based on long-term strategic thinking. It is based on shared interests and prosperity, not lobbying, not bribing, not transactions. Just look at India's ties with the US. It took years for New Delhi to warm up to Washington, to overcome the Cold War hesitancy. Multiple leaders have played a role in this project. It is the result of years of painful progress. It wasn't like flicking a switch. But Trump is threatening that project. What's even more worrying is this: there is no pushback from other power centers. US lawmakers have criticized Trump's handling of Canada. They have questioned him on NATO and Brazil, but on India, there has been silence. And that is worrying. The India-US partnership always had bipartisan support. If that's not the case anymore, it's a reality check. The next question is, where do you go from here? Who can reset this equation? Usually, bilateral relations are pinned on two factors: political will and security considerations. If even one is lacking, the other can prevail. Look at Trump and NATO. Politically, the US leadership does not like NATO, but the US security establishment does, which is why Trump is not walking out of NATO, not yet. But India was the opposite. We were never a treaty ally of the United States. We never bought a lot of American weapons. So the relationship was not based on security considerations. It was driven forward by political leaders, by US presidents and Indian prime ministers. And now we have a unique situation. Both security and political will seem to be lacking. So what can India do? It's a very complicated pickle. Recent events have shown that the US is not reliable. So India's tendency will be to diversify, to double down on its multipolar vision. At the same time, India needs a trade deal. And for that, India will have to make big ticket purchases. It will have to buy more US weapons. It will have to buy US gas. And it will have to invest in the US economy. Do you see the problem here? In the long run, we must diversify from the US. In the short run, we must double down on the US. There's a lot of opinion floating around. Some analysts say that this is the worst moment in 25 years of India-US ties. Others say that India should turn to China, basically speed up the reset as leverage. I'm afraid there are no easy choices here. On the one hand, you cannot give up such a relationship overnight. On the other, you have to be realistic. Whatever path India chooses, it must do so with conviction. In this tumultuous world, there is no place for half-hearted bets. There was a time when trade diplomacy was subtle. Quiet negotiations, tariff tweaks, and the need for formal notifications. In 2025, trade diplomacy wears a red tie and posts tariffs on Truth Social. You know who I'm talking about. US President Donald J. Trump. He's launched a global trade war and no one is safe. Allies, friends, partners and enemies, the world's economies are learning it the hard way. Because Trump is not negotiating trade deals, he is issuing ultimatums. We already told you about India. But we are not alone in this. Brazil too was in the line of fire. The South American giant thought it caught a break when the tariffs were announced. Only 10% tariffs on exports. It seemed like a slap on the wrist, but soon the slap became a chokehold. Trump has imposed an additional 40% tariff, so now Brazil faces around 50% tariffs. Why? Well, Trump said the US had a trade deficit with Brazil. The fact is it doesn't. America actually sells more to Brazil than it buys. But facts have never stood in the way of this administration's policy decisions because this wasn't about trade balances at all. This was about absolute power. And then there are the likes of South Korea, an American ally, a defense partner for ages. South Korea bent the knee, sort of. After weeks of pressure and thinly veiled threats, Seoul secured what its leaders are calling a deal. In reality, it is a 15% tariff on cars and chips. On steel and aluminium, it is 50%, 50. In return, they've promised to invest $350 billion in the United States. Is it a win? Maybe. But it's the kind of win you celebrate with clenched teeth. Other countries did not even get that much. The Philippines found itself publicly committed to a one-sided trade deal. Indonesia was strong-armed. Even the European Union rolled over. EU President Ursula von der Leyen flew to Trump's private golf course. She offered concessions in the form of a humiliating tariff pact. This was not diplomacy. This was a medieval court where Donald Trump played king. And if you thought this chaos only hit some countries, well, think again. Allies fared no better. Canada dropped its proposed tax on US tech giants only to be slapped with new tariffs weeks later. The UK was promised relief on steel duties, but that relief never came. Even Japan rushed to finalize a 15% tariff deal before the August 1st deadline. It now finds itself wondering what exactly it agreed to. And India? India is bracing for the worst of it. New Delhi has not folded yet, but Washington's message is quite clear. You are next. So where does this end? I guess that's the worst part. There is no clear off-ramp. Trump's strategy is calculated chaos. He keeps allies and enemies off balance. Each new concession strengthens his hand for the next round of bullying. Each deal he strikes sets a precedent for submission, and worst of all, this strategy works. Because the world is divided. Brussels bowed, Seoul blinked, Manila did not even realize it was in a negotiation. Trump wants a world where the US calls all the shots, where they decide who trades what, who trades when, and how much they pay for the privilege. And the longer the world waits, the harder it will be to undo. Because countries need to realize one thing: the only way to deal with a bully is to stand up to him. So the world now has a choice. Kneel now and keep kneeling, or push back even if it hurts a little. The global economy is not a kingdom. It's a commons built on rules, not royalty. And if the world does not speak up soon, the emperor won't just have no clothes, he will own the market that sells them.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Saying, should Congress ruling at the time and leading the charge of saffron terror as if it was established not take political accountability and responsibility for the fact that none of these cases have been proved?
Jai Hind, Shivani, at the very outset, I must say justice delayed is justice denied, as we all know. And since you have used the term saffron terror, the famous person who coined that term, actually, who was the Union Home Secretary at the point till 2013, later on joined the BJP and became a BJP MP and was a minister, a cabinet minister in the BJP government from 2019 to 2024. So let me just tell you that that is exactly the root cause of where we are standing today. This judgment, which is full of conjectures, rather I would say it is an oxymoron of a verdict. Why, I'll tell you. Because the judge has categorically written, and she writes that he or she, I'm not very clear, strong suspicion against accused but not enough to punish them. Hence, benefit of doubt. So both in a single breath, if you can say strong suspicion against the accused, but benefit of doubt is to be given. And now let me take you.
But
to
that's how
some very
verdicts are given. They have said that there is not enough
Shivani, allow me
conclusive
my
proof.
fair opportunity. You have asked me a question. Please have the patience to hear me out. I have some very intriguing points that I'm about to bring up. You know, the public prosecutor in this matter, Shivani, who was taking up this matter, Rohini Salyan, actually submitted on record in 2015 that she was asked by the NIA to slow down and go soft on the accused. You have yourself in your report told us, and later on, by the way, Rohini Salyan was pushed out of this entire prosecution in 2017. In spite of the fact that she represented one of the victims who came up to the Supreme Court because the justice was getting delayed arbitrarily, and she came and they were able to represent successfully. They were able to bring on record a lot of crucial evidence. And then 2007, she was pushed out of the thing. And you have yourself brought it on record that only 93, the court says 93 or 94 were actually injured, when on record it is 101. Let me also remind you, Shivani, that actually, 32 victims have gone hostile. 32 witnesses have gone hostile.
Yes.
39 witnesses have turned hostile, out of which 6 had actually submitted their statements before that. 30 witnesses have died, Shivani. So you see, what kind of a prosecution are we looking at? That is the central question of this debate.
Yeah, but the
today.
investigation has also been called out. You are talking about the prosecution that started, as most cases in India, much later. Almost takes 10 years before trial begins. But you're not talking about the investigation. The investigation happened when the UPA was in power, right? Why was the investigation botched up?
So Shivani, first of all, thank you so much. You basically underlined the point that this sort of judgments are actually an outcome of the lethargy.
Now let's talk about another country on Trump's too bully list, Iran. The Trump administration has imposed fresh sanctions. It has hit Iran's alleged shipping empire. The US Treasury says this is a network of 115 entities, individuals, vessels and companies across 17 countries, from the UK and Belgium to the UAE and India. And the US has targeted one man, an alleged oil tycoon who controls this empire worth tens of billions of dollars. So what's behind these moves? And what does this mean for Iran? Here's a report.
115 people, ships and entities, 17 countries, in one campaign.
The biggest day in history.
The U.S. has ramped up its maximum pressure campaign. It has imposed sweeping new sanctions on Iran. Technically, it is on Iran's so-called vast international shipping empire, which, according to the Trump administration, funnels tens of billions of dollars in oil revenue to Tehran. This is the biggest Iran sanctions action since 2018, when President Donald Trump initiated a pressure campaign on Tehran during his first term. With the new move, the Trump administration has sanctioned one man, an Iranian oil tycoon, Mohammad Hossein Shamkhani. He is the son of Ali Shamkhani, a top political advisor to the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. According to the U.S. Treasury Department, Iran's shipping network is controlled by the Shamkhani family. They say Shamkhani moves between the UAE and Tehran. He uses aliases while conducting business. He has foreign passports that allow him to travel internationally while staying undetected. And apparently, his network extends to 20 countries. It includes the UK, Belgium, France, Switzerland, Italy, and India. The 115 sanctions slapped on this network include 12 individuals, 52 vessels, and 15 shipping companies, including French, British, and Italian nationals, a Swiss-based shipping company, a Chinese oil terminal, and at least half a dozen Indian companies. These are some of the country's biggest petrochemical traders. The Trump administration accuses them of trading in Iranian petroleum and petrochemicals. What's behind these sweeping allegations and moves? Iran is one of the biggest oil producers in the world, and oil sale profits are a key source of revenue for the Iranian regime. While previous sanctions have put pressure on this, Iran still exports about 1.2 million barrels per day. And the Trump administration is seeking to drive this down. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that the Iranian regime elites leverage their positions to accrue massive wealth and fund the regime's dangerous behavior. He says that the network is one of, if not the largest evasion networks that exists in Iran now, where billions of dollars are being laundered through various companies located throughout the world. The U.S. wants to hurt this alleged oil network. Tehran has condemned the sanctions. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baqi says the new U.S. sanctions against Iran's oil trade are a malicious act aimed at undermining the economic development and welfare of the Iranian people. But that is probably exactly what the U.S. wants, specifically the development of Iran's nuclear program. And this comes as tensions between the two countries continue to soar. Following the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, Washington has reportedly been working through intermediaries to restart nuclear talks with Iran, but they continue to be on the back burner after Tehran's repeated rejections. Meanwhile, the Trump administration continues to put pressure on the defiant country. So will Tehran accept the nuclear deal? Or will Washington continue to use its carrot and stick approach?
There's something brewing in West Asia. After months of war, countries are finally waking up. They tolerated Israel's war for a long time, but now they've had enough. More and more countries are condemning Israel. They're also recognizing Palestine. The latest one to do so is Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney made the announcement yesterday. He plans to recognize Palestine in September.
For the reasons I cited earlier, Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026 in which Hamas can play no part, and to demilitarize the Palestinian state.
Canada is not alone. France announced its plan last week. Britain announced it on Tuesday. All three of them will recognize Palestine in September. Why September? Because that's when the United Nations General Assembly will be in session. US President Donald Trump is not happy about this. He says Canada's decision will derail their trade talks. Israel, too, has criticized the move. They say Carney is rewarding Hamas. If so, then most of the world seems to be rewarding Hamas, because Israel is in a minority. More than 140 countries recognize the state of Palestine. 4 out of the 5 UN Security Council members also recognize it, the permanent ones. China, Russia, France, and the UK. The only holdout? The United States of America. As of now, these moves are only symbolic because a viable state needs land. It needs sovereignty. But Palestine is occupied by Israel. Therefore, this does not change anything on the ground, this recognition. These countries could try to admit Palestine to the United Nations, but that would require a UNSC resolution, and as things stand, the US will veto it. Nonetheless, you cannot ignore the rising sentiment and the significance of it. This week, the UN hosted a special conference. It was chaired by France and Saudi Arabia. Its goal? To push for a two-state solution, one state for Israel, the other for Palestine. After the conference, 15 countries issued a joint statement. They expressed interest in recognizing Palestine. And this list includes countries beyond France, Canada, and the UK. It has countries that did not presently recognize Palestine, like Australia, New Zealand, Finland, Portugal. So what we are seeing is a mass movement of sorts. Many more countries could recognize Palestine before September, before the UN General Assembly. But just to be clear, this is not an endorsement of Hamas. No one wants Hamas in power, not even allies of Palestine. Look at the Arab countries. All 22 Arab League members condemned Hamas yesterday. It was the first such condemnation. They also asked Hamas to end its rule and surrender its weapons. then who will rule Gaza? The Arab nations are backing the PA, the Palestinian Authority. It enjoys international political support. It also rules parts of the West Bank, so the plan is for the Palestinian Authority, or the PA, to take over Gaza as well. But for that, Hamas must surrender. Israel has managed to weaken Hamas considerably. They have lost control of most parts of Gaza, but they still have one card to play, and that is the Israeli hostages. Hamas still holds around 50 hostages. Israel believes almost half of them are dead. The families want Prime Minister Netanyahu to strike a deal, but he continues to use force. Israel has launched multiple strikes in the last 24 hours. They have killed more than 100 Gazan civilians. So clearly, they don't care about the global opinion. They don't care if their allies recognize Palestine. So what do they care about? The United States of America, that's what they care about. The US public is overwhelmingly against Israel's war, but the US politicians, they support it. Yesterday, the US Senate voted on a new resolution. It was aimed at ending American military support to Israel. All Republicans voted against it, and the Democrats were split. 24 Democrats voted for the resolution. They wanted to halt bomb shipments to Israel. And this tells you why the war is not ending. It also tells you how broken the system is. Only 2 countries in the world want this war to continue. Everyone else wants it to end. So much for a rules-based world order. Now let's turn our attention to Burkina Faso. This is a landlocked country in West Africa. It is ruled by a military junta, and it has witnessed an attack. An armed group has hit a military base. 100 attackers stormed the base. They burned and looted it, leaving 50 soldiers dead. Who is behind this attack? Reportedly, JNIM. This is an Islamist group, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, and in recent months, it has become the deadliest terror group in West Africa. So what does this recent attack mean for Burkina Faso, and why is the security situation spiraling in the wider region? Here's a report.
This is Burkina Faso, a junta-run, landlocked country in West Africa. It is home to about 23 million people, and over the past few years, it has seen an unprecedented rise in violence. Armed groups control most of the country, especially outside of the capital, and in recent months, there has been a surge in attacks by militant groups. This week, Burkina Faso was rattled by another one. An armed group of about 100 militants stormed a military base. Fighters looted and burned the base, and left about 50 soldiers dead. It is suspected that JNIM is behind these attacks. JNIM stands for Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal-Muslimin. This is an Islamist group. In 2017, several militant factions came together to form JNIM, and this group is linked to Al-Qaeda. In fact, it is the terror group's West African affiliate. Thanks to JNIM, the deteriorating security situation in Burkina Faso has led to political shifts and back-to-back coups. But the junta has struggled to contain the violence. And this is not an isolated case. In recent years, Islamist insurgency has grown in the wider Sahel region. So much so that the Sahel is called the epicenter of global terrorism. It accounts for over half of all terrorism-related deaths globally. The Sahel stretches from the west coast of Africa, eastwards across the continent. The Sahel is rich in natural resources, like uranium and gold, but it is impoverished. Insurgent groups have long vied for control in the region, and political instability has been rampant. As groups have hit military and civilian targets, they have killed thousands of people, and this has contributed to several military coups in the region. As insurgency soars, JNIM has become one of the deadliest, if not the most dangerous, group operating in the Sahel region. It is behind the sweeping attacks across several West African nations, especially Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and their junta governments have struggled to contain the violence, much like the civilian ones that they replaced. These attacks are the latest sign of the collapsing security in the Sahel. That said, JNIM is hardly the only problem here. There are many different Islamist militant groups in the region. They have been fighting for control, for resources, and in recent months, for access to West Africa's coastline. The groups are fighting amongst themselves to access the coast, because this would mean greater capacity for arms trafficking and smuggling, thus ensuring more money and more power. And by the looks of it, the governments in the region have little control over whether or not that happens.
In today's digital era, data centers are everything. They basically house computer systems and manage massive amounts of data to support everything from social media platforms to streaming websites. But the problem is, data centers are energy hungry. And this is not good news for the world. With the rise of AI, the more data centers we have, the more power generation we will need. So what if we could move them away from the Earth? What if we could build data centers in space? Sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but this is exactly what companies are trying to do. Here's a report.
Vast warehouses with stacks of computers, storing and processing large chunks of data, building, running, delivering applications. Making sure that our websites, our apps, our companies and governments continue to run. This is what data centers do. And in the digital era, they are crucial. But they are also power hungry. Today, data centers account for around 1% of global electricity consumption. To give you an idea, the annual electricity consumption from data centers globally is about half the usage of household IT appliances, like computers, phones, and television. As artificial intelligence grows, so does the energy demand of data centers. It is expected to rise by 50% every year until 2030. That's not all. Data centers heat up, so they need cooling systems, which exacerbates water shortages in some regions. Plus, there is growing e-waste, which is generated from outdated equipment of these centers. As the need for data centers grows, with annual demand set to rise between 19% and 22% by 2030, so will the problems. And for years now, this has worried the world. But now there might just be a solution. Companies want to build data centers in space. This sounds like science fiction, but many firms are already working on it. US companies like Lumen Orbit, the EU's Ascend project, and most recently, an Abu Dhabi firm. Putting data centers in space would mean either placing them in the orbit around Earth or on the Moon. And while this sounds far-fetched, the idea is taking off because it comes with perks. There will be an unlimited source of energy. The sun. There will be plenty of space. So there would be no neighbors to complain about the environmental impacts of power-hungry centers ruining the vibe. And space data centers could help with things that Earth-bound centers cannot, like providing services for spacecraft or other space-based facilities. This seems like the ideal, ecologically friendly dream. But for now, the action plan has many hurdles. Despite the technological advancements, it is still very expensive to launch hardware into the orbit. Each kilogram costs thousands of dollars. And because many parts of data centers will have to be assembled in space, it would still be a very costly affair. Cooling the equipment in space would be a major problem too, because the conventional system cannot work well without gravity. Plus, the centers will need additional protection, because space weather can damage electronics. So critical data would be at risk. While there is great excitement around this potential solution of data centers in space, research and development is still playing catch-up. If scientists succeed, this could revolutionize how we manage our data. No one knows if and when that would happen, but brimming with hope, the world continues to watch this space.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Saying, should Congress ruling at the time and leading the charge of saffron terror as if it was established not take political accountability and responsibility for the fact that none of these cases have been proved?
Jai Hind, Shivani, at the very outset, I must say justice delayed is justice denied, as we all know. And since you have used the term saffron terror, the famous person who coined that term, actually, who was the Union Home Secretary at the point till 2013, later on joined the BJP and became a BJP MP and was a minister, a cabinet minister in the BJP government from 2019 to 2024. So let me just tell you that that is exactly the root cause of where we are standing today. This judgment, which is full of conjectures, rather I would say it is an oxymoron of a verdict. Why, I'll tell you. Because the judge has categorically written, and she writes that he or she, I'm not very clear, strong suspicion against accused but not enough to punish them. Hence, benefit of doubt. So both in a single breath, if you can say strong suspicion against the accused, but benefit of doubt is to be given. And now let me take you.
But that's how verdicts are given. They have said that there is not enough conclusive
Shivani, allow me my
proof.
fair opportunity. You have asked me a question. Please have the patience to hear me out. I have some very intriguing points that I'm about to bring up. You know, the public prosecutor in this matter, Shivani, who was taking up this matter, Rohini Salyan, actually submitted on record in 2015 that she was asked by the NIA to slow down and go soft on the accused. You have yourself in your report told us, and later on, by the way, Rohini Salyan was pushed out of this entire prosecution in 2017. In spite of the fact that she represented one of the victims who came up to the Supreme Court because the justice was getting delayed arbitrarily, and she came and they were able to represent successfully. They were able to bring on record a lot of crucial evidence. And then 2007, she was pushed out of the thing. And you have yourself brought it on record that only 93, the court says 93 or 94 were actually injured, when on record it is 101. Let me also remind you, Shivani, that actually, 32 victims have gone hostile. 32 witnesses have gone hostile.
Yes.
39 witnesses have turned hostile, out of which 6 had actually submitted their statements before that. 30 witnesses have died, Shivani. So you see, what kind of a prosecution are we looking at? That is the central question of this debate.
Yeah, but the
today.
investigation has also been called out. You are talking about the prosecution that started, as most cases in India, much later. Almost takes 10 years before trial begins. But you're not talking about the investigation. The investigation happened when the UPA was in power, right? Why was the investigation botched up?
So Shivani, first of all, thank you so much. You basically underlined the point that this sort of judgments are actually an outcome of the lethargic judicial system that we have, where the judicial appointments are held back, where the judicial entrance examinations are not successfully conducted, and for the last 11 years...
But that's not unique to this case. What's unique to this case? Mahima Singh, I asked you a question on saffron terror. I've given you enough time to talk about the details of this case. But you're saying that one of the people who was in your dispensation at the time, now with the BJP...
Donald Trump hates being mocked, but he's about to be hit by a tsunami of insults because the president has picked a fight with the wrong country. We Indians can be divided at times, but foreign criticism tends to unite us, especially on social media. Trump's claims have not gone down well on Indian social media, including his claim that India's economy is dead. It's a brave thing to say with $37 trillion in debt. Many years ago, Trump took part in a Comedy Central roast. Today is the unofficial second edition. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Multiple explosions rock Kiev amid a Russian attack on the Ukrainian capital. A US F-35 fighter jet crashes in California, and firefighters battle raging wildfires in Spain. Also taking you back in history, on this day in 2012, swimmer Michael Phelps won his 19th Olympic medal to become the most decorated Olympian of all time. Phelps would finish his career with a total of 28 medals. 23 of them were gold. 28 medals in all. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.